Hello, everybody. It's Greg Dieter here with the third edition of the It Was a Thing on TV Remastered series, as this time we are taking a look back at Episode 4, Jennifer Slept Here, from 1983 NBC. And this is notable for two things. In this episode, as of April 2021, is the only time we have had a guest on the show, in Kris Lane. And also, it is the only time that I have not appeared on an episode of It Was a Thing on TV. And the funny story is, once upon a time, before COVID, I had another job at a facility, and unfortunately, because Chris's schedule was only available for Saturday morning and at a shift at Saturday morning, I couldn't be able to record that. There's kind of a reason why we don't have guests mostly on this show, because it's hard to shuffle around four people's schedules. So, yeah, it's pretty historic. But, I'll tell you what, no matter what they say on this episode, this show is just awful. Awful. And I say so in the next episode, which is That's My Dog and Think Like a Cat, which is coming soon in the Remastered series. But enjoy as Mike, Chico, and Chris take a look at Jennifer Slept Here.
This is It Was a Thing on TV.
Total Red Man has ever done something like this to me!
It's,
time!
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the dregs of humanity!
Welcome to the It Was a Thing on TV podcast. Episode 4, Submission 020, Jennifer Slept Here. It aired on NBC from October 21st of 1983 to September 5th of 1984 for a total of 13 episodes.
Hello, it's me, and only you can see me.
I just saw the most beautiful ghost in the world. She slept here. I just saw the most outrageous kind of a girl. And she lives here. Jennifer, what you doing to me? In and out of my life you appear. They say the stars don't shine as bright since you left here. And Jennifer slept here. She lived here. She loved here, laughed here, and wept here. She slept here. And she never really left here. Jennifer slept here.
Hello, Mike Klaus here. I'm joined by Chico Alexander, and we have a special guest for the first time ever.
Woohoo!
Kris Lane.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
Oh my God! It's radio's Kris Lane. Oh my God! I'm such a big fan.
Oh my God, that one. He's here where?
Can I get your autograph?
Sure, I'm writing it down right now. Hold on a minute.
On this check from your personal bank account that I can go cash?
The only thing you'll be able to get with that is debt, I'm afraid. But if you're welcome to it, if you like it.
Good, just like my paychecks. Getting nothing. All right.
But don't.
So Kris is here because he is a fan of this show, Jennifer Slept Here. He has all the episodes on DVD.
Yep.
And he has joked for years about Ann Jillian. Which is really one of the main reasons I brought him here. I know he had the DVD. I've known that for years. But his love of Ann Jillian is without compare.
Yes.
I think.
What can I say? There's just something special about her. Let's just put it that way. And I love it when my fellow friends can appreciate the love and beauty that is Ann Jillian.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But about the show, it aired on Friday nights, sort of continuing our trend of dealing with NBC Friday night shows. Mr. Smith was on at 8 p.m., and then Jennifer Slept Here was on at 8:30, and then 9 o'clock was Manimal. And we're not covering the 10 o'clock show next week because we'll get into that later on in the podcast. And so NBC at some point must have doubled down on trying to save Jennifer Slept Here, because in the summer of 1984, right before it was canceled, Jennifer Slept Here also aired on Wednesday nights. So you had Wednesday night and Friday night, and the shows that aired then were just summer reruns. I mean, it's not like nowadays where you have a whole new series which will last 6 weeks or 8 weeks like they do with Pyramid or Match Game or any of these other short-run series that show up every year. They showed reruns of Jennifer Slept Here because NBC was trying anything to get people to watch their insipid shows. As we mentioned earlier, Ann Jillian, she was the main star of the show. She played the ghost Jennifer, and she had a very good track record going into the show. Not that I'd say her track record was mangled in any way because she was on Jennifer Slept Here, but she was on the sitcom It's a Living, which was on ABC in 1981 and 82. Spoiler, that might be another episode. But also, she was nominated for an Emmy and a Golden Globe after portraying Mae West in a 1982 television movie. So she had some cachet at the time. She was a known star, a known entity, obviously award nominated. So she was not a bum they just picked up off the streets. But also, in addition to Ann Jillian, the other big name that was on this show was Glenn Scarpelli, who you might remember as being on One Day at a Time. He was there from 1980 to 1983, and if this was his decision to go from One Day at a Time to Jennifer Slept Here, it might not have been the best career move. Now, I know One Day at a Time only lasted another year or two, but still, you're going from a sitcom that lasted 9 seasons, I believe, 8 or 9 seasons, to Jennifer Slept Here. I mean, the only thing that could have been worse is if he moved from One Day at a Time to Mr. Smith.
Hey, I will not have you bad-mouthing the good name of Mr. Smith.
And I will not have you bad-mouthing the good name of Glenn Scarpelli.
I'm being double-teamed.
He is.
Yes, here you are.
I've had the pleasure of speaking to him many times as far as the great thing known as the internet is. And he's an absolutely amazing gentleman. He really is.
No, I can vouch for it. I know that Kris has spoken to him, or at least I think is connected to him in on social media. And yeah, Glenn Scarpelli, from everything I've seen, is a great guy. And we all make bad career moves. So it's totally understandable. It's something that happens. But no, yeah.
And plus, you also have to take into consideration the 80s was a very eclectic and unique decade when it came to all forms of entertainment, movies, music, and television.
Especially around 1983 to 84. You're absolutely right about that.
Well,
yeah.
You know, and when you think about it, it's always the center of the decade where the decade's definitions become official. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's true, because when you think 80s, you think Miami Vice, you think outrageous hair, the fashion, shoulder pads, and that's all right around that 83, 84, 85 timeline.
Right, because usually it takes a couple of years where they were still emulating the prior decade.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. Boy, Kris has been on here for 3 minutes. He's provided more insight than we've done in 3 episodes.
I know,
and I've been awake for about 20 hours, too. Knock, knock.
Ah, there you go.
That takes talent.
Yeah, he has the distinct advantage of being awake more than we are. But yeah, I mean, the 80s was just this whole fantastic time, judging by all of the entries in our little logbook here.
Yeah, the 80s are quite diverse with not just bad shows, but just unique shows. Shows that the networks just tried to throw on the wall, see if it would stick. Some of them stuck for about a year. Some of them, let's say like Night Court, stuck around for 9 years.
And some of the pasta that was thrown on the wall had so much sauce it just slid right down to the bottom.
Yeah.
Speaking of Jennifer Slept Here.
Oh. Yeah.
I walked right into that.
Yeah, you totally did.
You New Jersey folks and your pizzas. So the show itself, it really, I don't want to say it was a one-trick pony. I'm sure Chris can overrule me if he wants to about that. But the main thing was Jennifer, played by Ann Jillian. She was a ghost of a former actress, a deceased actress. And this sort of uses the TV trope of only one person can see and hear you, not unlike The Great Gazoo and Fred Flintstone or Stewie and Brian on Family Guy. So the person who could see Jennifer was this 14-year-old kid named Joey.
By John P. Navin.
Yep.
And actually, that's another name that I've never heard of. The only two people I've heard of from this show are Ann Jillian and Glenn Scarkelly.
You've never heard of Georgia Engel?
Oh, Georgia Engel! I totally forgot about her. Yes,
Thanks, Chico, I appreciate that. I was just getting ready to throw a fit.
Oh my!
yes, Georgia.
She was on frickin' Mary Tyler Moore, and then on the Betty White show. And
No,
you
you're absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. I totally forgot about her. I'm sorry. And she did, unfortunately, just pass away within the last few months.
I'm
So,
very
yeah.
upset that you don't remember me.
That was Chris's impersonation of Georgia Engel, a ghost that only Mike can see and hear.
You're in
Wait,
trouble now, Michael.
Georgia spoke here? Is that what's going on?
Yeah. And of course, she played the mom, and the dad was played by Brandon Maggart, who was a big movie star before this, but is more than likely known for being Fiona Apple's dad. Oh yeah, and he also did 5 seasons of Brothers on Showtime.
Which is another fantastic show, incidentally.
Which is another great show, absolutely. You'll never hear that on this podcast. So what I was looking for was the TV Guide capsule previewing Jennifer Slept Here in 1983. And here's what TV Guide said about Jennifer Slept Here. Jennifer Farrell, Ann Jillian, was a famous movie star. She died about 6 years ago and still has a fatal weakness. Her ghost refuses to move out of her Beverly Hills house. She loves the old haunt, especially when the tour bus comes by, which it does several times a day, and the driver says, when her star vanished, the heavens glowed a little less brightly. Aww.
Don't you just love it?
This has got so much corn, I'm not going to go there. Now the Elliott family moves in from New York. Susan, played by Georgia Engel, George, played by Brandon Maggart, and their 2 children, Joey, 14, played by, as we said, John P. Navin Jr., and Marilyn, age 6, played by Maya Ackerling. Jennifer's ghost is assigned, quote-unquote, to Joey, who most of the time is the only one who can see her. She helps him get through a perilous event. It's called puberty. While Joey's friends, especially Mark, Glenn Scarpelli, wonder why he's talking to thin air a lot. Joey's father, meanwhile, is unimpressed with living in Jennifer Farrell's house. Character Susan, this is a quote, "You think all Hollywood actresses sleep their way to the top. George, even meter maids sleep their way to the top." Ha 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 ha!
Hollywood jokes. Ha 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 ha.
13 episodes. 13 episodes of that.
And you know what else? Within that 13 episodes, in typical 80s fashion, they still managed to have a very special one, too.
Oh, everything was very special in the 80s. So, yeah, that's the capsule that TV Guide put in their 1983 Fall TV preview.
Of course, that was during the pilot, and it was retconned in episode 2 to 20 years ago, which was weird, but whatever.
So, well, what's old is new again, I think.
So, in other words, what you're saying is that Jennifer Slept Here was actually way ahead of its time.
Well, it was both dated and ahead of its time. It's more like a 1980s answer to the Ghost and Mrs. Moore.
Oh, and another good show in and of itself, which starred one Charles Nelson Riley, by the way. Had to throw that in there. But yeah, well, it's not necessarily ahead of its time because, as I said earlier, The Great Gazoo and Fred Flintstone did the same thing on the Flintstones. This little Martian would come over Fred Flintstone's shoulder, sort of like his conscience. And, oh, you big dummy, don't, do this, or, or you better go get Wilma a bouquet of flowers because you screwed up tonight or whatever. And he would, talk, and I don't think it was ever mentioned on the Flintstones, hey, Fred, why are you talking to your shoulder? But still, it's been done, it's still being done, and it'll be done in the future.
And it was done again by NBC later that same decade.
Oh, yeah. Spoiler alert.
And for which show is this?
This was a show called Nearly Departed.
Oh, another possible future entry. Wink, wink, wink.
And Nearly Departed was only on the air for a third of Jennifer Slept Here.
Well, Jennifer Slept Here got rerun to death because as I said earlier, the show ran for almost a full calendar year, a little bit over 10 months, and there were 13 episodes done. So, yeah, I mean, it may have been on less time, but there were probably just as many episodes.
There were a total of 6 that were recorded, and only 4 made it to air. The other 2 did not get to air until, in this country, never. When it was rerun briefly in Australia, the other 2 were shown.
Australia, we're sorry. Okay, now that I got that out of the way.
Oh, wow.
Well, since we have the expert here in the form of Mr. Lane.
Who?
Oh, am I talking about your dad when I call you Mr. Lane?
No, I'll take it. That's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry for being professional for once.
That's quite all right, sir.
So, I'm not a sir, but I take that as a badge of honor too.
Okay, very good.
So, since we have our expert Kris here, and you've seen all the shows, what was done good? What was good and what was bad about the shows? And if there's nothing good, we could just skip to the bad.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, was the show a masterpiece? Far from it. It was far from a masterpiece. But it was about 24 minutes once a week of being able to escape reality, if you want to call it that. It was just a weird show that made you think, whether you thought it was, what the heck am I watching? Or, okay, that's interesting. If anything else, it was potential for starting conversations. Whether you, everything from the special effects that were used to the storylines that were done, which were, let's face it, for the most part, pretty ridiculous. But you know what? And in some cases, you also have to realize, even though the show was on regular primetime, I sometimes think that in some aspects, it probably would have been better if it had been retooled as a show for either young adults or even younger. Not necessarily with the same cast. Because there was one episode, for example, where she needs to help Jennifer needs to help Joey break into an office to his school, because what had happened was he was writing a letter for typing class. And that goes to show how far back we're going. We're talking he had to type on a typewriter. And he was teasing, having fun with it and calling his teacher all kinds of stuff. Well, his mom accidentally actually mails it instead of the actual one. So then he's like, Jennifer, you can walk through walls. You need to help me get this letter back. Stuff like that makes me think that the show would have been better off if it was targeted at a young adult audience as opposed to an adult audience.
You see, I'm actually going to disagree because I go through that every day in my daily life. Except it's not done by actual letters, by typing. It's either done through private messaging, or sometimes it's graffiti on walls. But enough about my life. You do actually bring up a very good point about breaking away from reality. Mm-hmm. Because now that I think about it, that entire the 2-hour block from 8 to 10 o'clock on Friday nights is a giant break from reality, because you have first a talking orangutan with an IQ of 256. Then you've got the ghost of a former movie star, a fictional former movie star, who only the teenage son can communicate with. And then you have the ultimate fiction, a man who can shapeshift into animals, depending on the situation, to save the day, if you will. So that entire 2-hour block was a giant escape from reality if you look at it.
So in other words, in that aspect, it was in a way a perfect fit for that block at that time.
Yeah, and actually it was perfect for Friday night because most people don't have work the next day. My apologies if you do.
That's me.
I was gonna say that's you and Chico. Unfortunately, us teachers don't have to work on Saturdays. Now you know
why
I
don't you
got.
just rub the salt in the wounds a little
Well,
bit?
well, now you know. Now you know why I went to that career path. No, I'm kidding.
And don't forget holidays too.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I definitely can understand that. So yeah, it was a giant break from reality. And yes, since people don't work on Saturdays generally, with all due respect to both of my counterparts on this show, you don't have the realism that you might see on a show a different day of the week. It's sort of an escape to the weekend. So
Right.
I think that's a great way that you mentioned that.
It also explains most of the TGIF lineup. Again, spoiler alert.
Well, not just TGIF, but also the CBS Block Party. Double spoiler alert. That's another submission we may venture into one day. So I have the 13 episodes here and their plot lines. And again, if Kris wants to chime in with good, bad, indifferent comments about each show, that's more than appreciated.
Let's go down the line. Let's go.
We know what the pilot's about. With Elliot settling into their home, a recently deceased actress, Jennifer Farrell, appears to Joey for the first time and later talks him out of a return trip to New York City to see a girl he had a crush on before relocating to California. Aww.
Yeah.
Boy, that sounds like my life right about that time when I was about 13, 14 years old.
Yep.
Because that actually happened to me. A girl had a crush on me, and right before we started, really mingling, or when we would have started mingling, she moved to California. Aww.
Aw.
I'm still single. Call me. You know where I'm at. And then episode 2, Jennifer the Movie. A planned biopic on her life leaves Jennifer furious. A rival actress she despised when she was alive will play her. And a key scene to be filmed at her home is altered for tawdry effect.
Very true.
But
How tawdry is it?
Basically, her rival was trying to kill her legacy by basically making her out to be the tramp that Brenda Maggard's character always assumed that she was. And they did not get along very well when she was still alive, and it was basically going to be one last F to them. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yes. And what ends up happening is Jennifer does her magic to make it aware that she's around, and basically Joey's character is going, I have a couple of connections and I can very easily reverse this whole thing. So you better start giving her a little bit more respect and not alter what was reality.
Boy, that doesn't sound like real life. Catty actresses going after each other.
Well, was Dynasty on the air yet?
83, yes, absolutely.
Was.
There you
and
go.
Not only was it on the air, it was getting its sort of claws ready to pounce, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah, that doesn't. Yeah,
That
isn't apropos.
Now, don't tell me this isn't like a precursor to The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Maybe a little bit.
Well, in a fictional sense, but right now, what's going on in my mind? That meme from The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills with that woman yelling at the person and the white cat sitting there.
Yep.
that is the best meme ever.
I like that little cat.
Yes, it is.
Oh my gosh.
Should be noted that, hey Kris, did they retcon it from 6 years to 20 yet?
I believe
After the episode? After the pilot? Because I'm imagining a situation where 20 years is not kind to anybody.
You know what? I don't think it was at that point yet.
Okay.
I think it was later on that was given the jumping syndrome, as you know, the Cunningham syndrome, of course. Just that they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
All right, episode 3. Not with my date, you don't. A new girl stands in the way of Joey and Mark, and a pair of concert tickets that the girl actually wants.
Yep.
So apparently they want to go to Oingo Boingo since it's 1983.
Nope.
Was it a fictional band or a real band?
It was Rick Springfield.
Okay. That was the second answer. 1983 is Rick Springfield or Toto or
Yep.
somebody.
Yep, it was Rick Springfield. He was still a little bit hot from General Hospital still, but his music career was already taken off. And basically, they both Mark and Joey, they had a thing for this girl, and she was basically using both of them, toying with both of them.
And was the girl actually trying to play her way to get a date with one person specifically, or was she playing both of them for fools?
She wanted to get with first she wanted to be with Mark because she just had she had the thing going with Mark first. Then what happened was she learns that Joey has Rick Springfield tickets that his parents got him. So then she wants to, he's like, oh, screw that. I want to go out with Joey now because he's got these Springfield tickets. So basically she starts like woozing him over and all that. And ultimately Jennifer steps in, of course, because why not? And basically does everything but call her a hussy. And eventually the two guys go together to the concert.
Ooh, cat's got claws. Typical girl. Trying to get I shouldn't say typical girl. Apologies to the girls out there. It's just my life experiences are different than most. Trying to get the money, trying to get the actual product.
Right.
No, I don't love you for your looks or your sense of humor or your intelligence. I love you for your Rick Springfield tickets.
Yep.
Which one does in the mid-1980s.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, heck yes.
Ooh, episode 4, the creatively titled Boo. And we're not talking about somebody's boo, their best friend. It's a ghost. Boo. The ghost of Jennifer's mother, Debbie Reynolds. There's a good name to attach to the show. Pays her daughter a visit, but goes missing after the two have a falling out over the influence the mother had on her daughter's career. To help contact her in a seance, Jennifer agrees to assist Joey in impressing a pair of twin girls. Joey's a little pimp. He had a girl for the concert in the last episode. Now he's trying to impress a pair of twin girls? Oh, yeah. I can't wait until the next episode he goes after triplets.
No, that did not happen, unfortunately.
Aw.
So basically, Jennifer's having a fit, and Joey's like, what's going on? She was like, oh, I think my mother's coming. And sure enough, here she comes, the fabulous Debbie Reynolds, God rest her soul. And they're just clashing from the get-go because she didn't believe that Jennifer was doing the proper type of acting work that she should have been doing, and that she always felt that she was being disrespected, even though she wasn't. And long story short, also, the twin girls were next door. I think they were next door. They were down the street. I forget. But both Glenn Scarpelli's character and John P. Navin's character were both trying to get with one of them. And they gave up going to a party to hang out with them. And they were like, oh, well, we're going to have a party here. And, they started having, Joey had started decorating the house like for Halloween and all that. But they were very unimpressed because, it was cheap, tacky decorations. So, of course, he goes, Jennifer, I really need some help here. I need to impress these ladies. So she goes, okay. So she works her magic and makes the things fly around and all that. And it freaks them out, and, of course, they, get into their arms and all that. And, typical 80s, I got to get with the girl plot. So how am I going to do it? How am I going to scare her into it?
And you see, the first thing that I thought of when I read this plot line, it predates Jennifer Slept Here by a couple of years, is the movie Mommy Dearest.
Oh, boy.
Love that movie.
Yeah. Oh, great movie if you've never seen it.
Great.
But just the falling out thing Just
Yes.
Christina Crawford and Joan Crawford. I could
Oh.
just see Debbie Reynolds coming out of the closet. No wire hangers.
Well, you know how Debbie Reynolds was. She had that class to her that she
Oh, she
was.
absolutely did. Absolutely. Now I wonder if Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher are clashing or might have clashed. Don't make me bring up that episode Boo of Jennifer Slept Here. I will do that on you, Carrie. No. Oh, episode 5. The reason I say ooh is just looking at the first 2 words of this capsule. Monty Hall. It's
Yes.
an episode called Calendar Girl. Monty Hall has a cameo in an episode that finds Joey discovering a box of Jennifer's unclaimed items, which include a nude photo she posed for early in her career. And when George discovers it and plans to sell it off at an auction at her estate, Jennifer asks Joey to retrieve it.
Yes.
So what did Monty Hall do? Was he the auctioneer? I mean, that would be like a perfect fit for how he was in Let's Make a Deal.
Ironically, he was not an auctioneer. He wanted to buy the nude picture.
Okay.
He wanted to buy the nude picture, so he was there as a patron.
Gotcha.
And it was actually it was weird because George's character, you know how sweet and innocent she always is in her shows. Of course, now George already saw the nude picture and all that, and she's like, "Oh, this thing is the one thing that we're selling for the auction. We need to make the money and blah 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 blah." And all George's character is saying, he was like, "Well, why would anybody want that old calendar? 1968 ain't coming anytime again. Why would anybody want that calendar?" Totally oblivious to the fact that she's naked in the picture.
Boy, imagine if this was about 13 years later. You've got this thing called eBay where everybody will buy a calendar from 1968.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, what ends up happening is they're able to get the calendar back. And what's funny is that when they said in the listing was that it was a nude photo. So I forget exactly how it happens, but they were able to swap the photo with a nude baby picture.
Seems legit.
Yeah, just like any other time a ghost wants to make sure a painting doesn't go to auction. That's what you do. It's common knowledge.
And this lasted only 13 episodes?
Yeah.
Okay. Only 13 episodes.
Only.
Oh, this could be celebrating its 37th season this year, but no. 13 episodes.
Yeah.
I'm detecting a little bit of sarcasm in there, Michael.
A little bit?
All right, a lot.
Oh, we're knee deep in sarcasm at this point.
Knee deep in the hoopla. Great record, too.
Episode 6. One of our jars is missing.
I actually liked this episode. I'm going by the almighty knowledge by consensus Wikipedia here. After seeing their son talking to a lamp, George and Susan hire a phony expert on poltergeists, played by Zelda Rubinstein, who played a similar role in the film Poltergeist, to rid the house of Jennifer, and to Joey's shock, it works. Now Joey and Jennifer must convince her to restore Jennifer's power before a letter that Joey accidentally wrote is mailed off. And
there's the what Chris was talking about earlier.
That was the B plot from earlier, Chris.
Yes.
So here's the deal. First of all, Zelda Rubinstein is an absolute riot. She did this so well, obviously from her association with Poltergeist the year before. She basically admits that she's a quack. What happens is she takes her spirit. Well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. Joey agrees to do this, not only as a way to have Jennifer prove that she cannot be stopped by a poltergeist. Stopped by a, I guess, exorcist. I guess one thing you would call it. I guess.
Yeah.
So he agrees to do it for the sake of his folks. So when she comes out and she's doing it, of course, Jennifer's mocking her, of course, the whole time. And she goes, okay, I've put her spirit into this pickle jar. So she's now in an empty pickle jar. So Joey picks up the pickle jar, and there she is in the pickle jar, and she's having a fit. She's like, first of all, it smells like pickles in here. Just call me Mrs. Clausen. She was just not liking it. Well, what ends up happening is he, going back to the letter, has to go grab the letter. And what happens is they go over to, what do you call it? The way that it works is they're able to get her out of the jar. Joey was able to get her out of the jar just by unscrewing it, so she got out of the jar. But the problem is that she was getting ready to disappear because what Zelda's character had done was literally exorcise her. So they go over to her and they're like, asking her, you have to help me, you have to help me. And Zelda's character is going, well, I have no problem with that, but there's only one problem. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, quote unquote. So she's like, basically, I am a performer. I go to a couple of parties, I make a couple of bucks. I don't know what I'm doing. So ultimately, they are able to reverse the spell and the day is saved.
Yay.
You have just as much as enthusiasm as Michael did a minute ago. And I know what you both are thinking.
And that's not sarcasm.
I know what you both are thinking. This crazy guy knows all this about a simple show that was like from 1983.
No, but seriously, it's like one of those things. It's like that. It's like this plot, this episode was what drew me to look up more about this show.
I would probably say that this was one of the better episodes in the whole series. I think that one was probably the best one.
Well, also I'm going to add, and this is by no means is demeaning, but everybody is an expert at something. Everybody loves something so much that they know so much about the topic. I mean, if we're talking about TV shows, I absolutely love The Critic from 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. Spoiler, that might be coming up in the near future. So the thing is, just because you know so much about a goofy 13-week sitcom, I mean, that's no reflection on your character. I mean, that's actually something that's the reason I brought you here, because I knew you're such a big fan of the show.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that.
And it's actually funny because, I mean, obviously I was too young when the show was on. It's never been rerun. A former friend of mine, we were hanging out one day, and we played that game, where let's grab a VHS tape with no label and see what's on it, which is always good for a laugh and fun. And one of the episodes of Jennifer Slept Here was on that tape. And I was like, what show is this? And he was like, oh, where do you see this cornball show? So I watched the episode and I thought it was crazy. And that was when I scoured the internet and was trying to find the episodes, and I was ultimately able to find them. And then that just kind of started my whole liking for finding strange and unusual shows.
And that's sort of why we're here. Absolutely.
So pretty much Jennifer Slept Here is what got me interested in looking up more information about short-lived forgotten sitcoms.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all gone down that rabbit hole at some point. We see something on some web page or some blog, and then, I got to look at this show a little more, see what this is all about. And then next thing you know, 5 hours later, you've watched all 13 episodes.
Yep.
And truthfully, between myself and Chico and Greg, while we're doing all the submissions and ideas for future shows, that has brought us down many a rabbit hole. And I can even admit, yesterday I went down one such hole yesterday during my lunch period for an episode, which actually we're not going to do it until I think July. Yeah, I'm not going to give the name of the show, but it's for an episode we have slated for July of 2020. And I just, and it's kind of interesting revisiting this show, because I told Greg and Chico I had stumbled across an episode of this show on YouTube maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and I couldn't last about 3 minutes into it. It looked so corny and cheap. And that may actually be a little bit of a hint towards who the producer of the show was. Corny and cheap. But then I went back yesterday and it's like, this really isn't bad. It's a little goofy. It's, again, done on the cheap. But, it's really not a bad show. And then, so I know exactly what you're talking about, just going into one of those situations where you're like, okay, this is some goofy show. Oh, it's actually sort of interesting or it catches my eye somehow. And then suddenly, next thing you know, you've watched all 13 episodes a dozen times.
Yep, that's pretty much how I'm able to recite these from memory.
Well, again, like I said, everybody does that. Or not everybody, but yeah, there's certain shows that people do that with. Like I said, The Critic is one of my favorites, and that was only on for 2 seasons. And there's other shows I have on DVD which lasted 6 shows or 13 shows.
And I have
So I totally
I have
get
one
it.
of them en route. I can't wait.
Episode 7. So here's the halfway point, the median. Trading Faces. Jennifer discovers that she has the ability to enter other people's bodies. So she uses Susan so she can rekindle a former mortal flame.
Yes, she does. Basically, it starts off with Joey and Jennifer watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers on TV. So he's going, "Hey, Farrell, can ghosts really do that?" And she's like, "No, it's ridiculous." And Joey's like, "Well, have you ever actually tried it?" And she said, "No, but I don't think that it could actually work." Enter little sister, annoying little sister. And Joey's like, "Hey, give it a shot. You got nothing to lose." So she enters the little sister's body, and of course she has her, her ridiculous, I've played some small venues in my life, but this is ridiculous. And then she learns that she can very easily enter other people's bodies. And she starts having fun with it. She entered Glenn Scarpelli's character and walks up to Joey and goes, "I've never mentioned before, but you have beautiful eyes." And of course he's freaking out because he's like, "What are you talking about?" Then here comes Jennifer out. "Ha ha, I fooled you." And ultimately what ends up happening is there was an old flame of hers that happened to be in town and went to the house. And she was like, "I really never got a chance to say goodbye. I really wish that I could have." So she enters George's character and basically is able to tell him goodbye. That was her way of making closure, because that would be the only way. Because when she did enter the other bodies, they were able to see her here when she had control. So that was her way of saying goodbye to an old flame.
This entire episode is basically the entire plot line of the series Automan, which we covered in the second half of last week. But I mean, that's exactly what it is, because you had the main character, Desi Arnaz's character in Automan, merging into Automan's hologram body, and that was more to become vehicles or
Right.
or stuff like that. But still, it's the same plot line, which I find very interesting.
Now I'm trying to think. Was Automan before, after, or during?
Automan premiered just after. The original air date of this episode was December 2nd of 83, and Automan premiered 2 weeks later, I want to say. I don't know the exact
Just
date.
about.
It's on episode 3 from last week. Go back to episode 3. You can figure out what date it premiered. But it did premiere mid-December of 83, so it was not far after
that's
this
really
episode
close. That's really close.
aired. Very close.
I never thought of that. That's really close.
Episode 8, Rebel with a Cause. With Jennifer's help, Joey is able to take care of a bully, and in the process acquire his entire lifestyle.
Now, would this be the very special episode?
No.
Oh.
I'm just wondering what his entire lifestyle is.
Basically, in the series, Joey's pretty clean cut. And he, what happens is he's getting bullied in school, and what happens is Jennifer actually fought for him, like physically fought for him, like threw him around and all that. Well, the bully is thinking that Joey's the one doing it, so he basically leaves him alone, and essentially he's now the rebel now instead of being the clean cut. And then Jennifer ultimately decides, and of course there was a girl involved, of course, at one point. And ultimately he learns that, this isn't really for me. I really can't fight even if I wanted to. So basically he pretty much ends it, because Jennifer doesn't want to help him anymore either, because she's like, "You got to be yourself. You shouldn't be somebody that you're not." And ironically, no, this is not the special episode.
And actually, this is the last episode in 1983. It was December 16th of 83. And it went on, I'm going to assume, either hiatus or reruns, and then returned in April of 1984 with 5 new episodes.
That's correct.
Episode 9, Risky Weekend. With the rest of the family away, Joey keeps an eye on the house, but a sailboat moored in the backyard crashes into the dining room. To help pay for repairs, he agrees to let the repairman use the house for a bingo game. That is until Joey and Jennifer discover that it's really a gambling operation.
Like they couldn't tell that from the very beginning. And incidentally, this was the first episode that I saw.
And again, another plot being recycled because Bob's Burgers did it like 2013 when the kids take over the restaurant. They decided to run an underground casino until mom and dad come home and are like, what is this? And then the landlord comes by, Mr. Fishoder, and says, oh, if you're running a gambling operation, I'm going to need you to pay rent or something like that, since it's more than just a restaurant.
Right.
And ultimately, it became a sort of double or nothing wager doing rock, paper, scissors for like 6 months of back rent or something like that. So again, another episode that's been done, not necessarily done to death, but another tie I see there, which is interesting.
Right. Basically, Joey's parents go away, and I forget how the boat ended up in the house, but it broke through the house. Not unlike Stephanie Tanner when she drove Joey's car into there's the name Joey again. Drove it into the car into the kitchen, but so they need to repair the wall before the parents get home. So I forget exactly who it was, but they did start a bingo thing going on over there, and it was for gambling. At the very end, they wanted to take all the money, and they weren't going to leave them with anything. They were just going to use the house, and ultimately Jennifer was able to get the money out because she was obviously able to say, "This is the card you got to play. This is what they got."
I'm just thinking about how that boat got into the house, and this actually just came to mind. It's very coincidental since the time we're recording this is right around the 7th anniversary of Superstorm Sandy. Just wondering, with all that rain, might it have just floated into the house? I'm just hypothesizing here, but it's just the first thing that came to my mind when you mentioned the whole plot line. Given that it's November 2nd, and my house was severely affected right around that time by Superstorm Sandy, I totally would understand if that was the case.
I want to say that the boat was on a trailer, and the trailer lost control.
Feasible. Okay.
I want to
Plausible.
say. I want to say that the boat was being transported, and whoever was driving the boat lost control.
Okay. That makes sense.
I actually don't remember that one. I'll have to look that up later.
Episode 10. Do you take this ghost? Oh, I mean, we can just look at that title and we know what it's going to be about. Somebody's getting married.
Somebody's getting married. Yeah. Jennifer's former Playboy boyfriend. How many former Playboy boyfriends does Jennifer Farrell have? Anyway, Jennifer's
the same number of girlfriends that Joey has.
Oh, cool. Jennifer's former Playboy boyfriend, who is also a ghost, wants to revive the relationship they had when they were alive. Eve McVeigh made a guest appearance.
So Brandon Mygard and George's characters, they decide to renew their wedding vows. And the way that it works was, since Jennifer and her old flame never really got to do anything or get married, they decided to take that same ceremony so that they can have their own pseudo ceremony.
Now, was this done like in the ghost world, or was there actually like a living minister or justice of the peace who was doing this?
There was a living minister that was doing the renewal of the vows. And while he was renewing the vows, they were basically like right in front of them doing their own recognition.
But they were still in ghost form, though, so he could see the ghosts?
No, he couldn't see the ghosts. The priest had absolutely no idea that they were even there. They were just taking advantage of the fact that there was going to be somebody there performing such a ceremony. So they just took advantage of it. They couldn't, I mean, obviously it wasn't official, obviously, because they were dead. But basically it was just a thing where, like, okay, well, since this is going on now, I don't want to say the word pretend, but let's, just do it at the same time so we can know what it felt like to go through such a ceremony.
How absurd.
That one was not one of my favorites at all.
I wonder why. That's just...
See, even I have standards.
Not many, but you do have some.
Yes.
But that that just doesn't make any sense. How a Justice of the Peace, again, I'm not wrapping my mind around it. It's too early in the morning, and I no, it's just too weird. Episode 11, Life with Grandfather. George's father pays a visit, but when he dies unexpectedly, oh, another ghost in the house. Great. The Elliots finally have kind things to say about him that they never told him when he was alive. And I'm guessing the father did turn into a ghost, and he was there to hear all the praise they heaped on him.
Not necessarily. First of all, this is the one that would be considered the very special episode, incidentally.
Okay.
Basically, the grandfather shows up, and he's trying to hang out with everybody, but everyone's just too busy for him. Joey was too busy. He was George's father, and he was too busy for him. And it was always one of those things like, okay, well, we'll hang out tomorrow, we'll do stuff tomorrow, that sort of thing. Well, he is up in the attic, which is incidentally where Jennifer Farrell's room was after she was a ghost. It was the attic. So he's up in the attic, the grandfather, and doing like a chemistry experiment because he loved to have things blow up for some reason. Well, he blows up too much and he blows himself literally up to death. So Jennifer runs up to the attic and is going, oh my God, now the attic is all totally destroyed. And she's like, are you all right? And he says, oh yeah, I had a little bit too much boom boom. And they start talking. And then she's like, wait a minute, you can hear me and see me? And he goes, wait a minute, aren't you Jennifer Farrell? I thought you were dead. And she was like, well, guess what we have in common? So what ultimately happens is at that point, later in this show, they're watching home movies. And they're all saying, we really regret, we wish that we could have been able to talk to him and all that. And in the middle of that, Joey runs up to his bedroom and he starts saying, Grandpa, Grandpa. And Jennifer's like, I knew this was coming. And he was like, all right, where is he? If I can talk to you and see you, where is he? And she's like, it doesn't work that way. And then he was like, it's not fair. You need to change this. I want to be able to say goodbye to him. I need to say, that I'm going to miss him and all that. And he was like, we just, shut up and let me talk to him. And she was like, I can't. She's like, this is why you got to appreciate the people that are in your life while they're still around. And so then ultimately he just starts talking to him, hoping that he can hear him. And of course he breaks down the very end and end of story.
I don't know. At least for me, that plot line sort of hits home. That sounds like the most realistic plot line.
I think anybody that has ever lost anybody, whether it's a parent, a friend, they've always had that one desire. Man, I wish I could talk to them one more time. I feel that way with my mom all the time.
Oh, yeah, so do I.
Absolutely.
And I know you do, Mike, too, with everyone in your family also.
Well, and I mean, when you're talking about this, the first, and it's kind of coincidental that the title of this episode is Life with Grandfather, because the one thing that went through my mind was my grandfather, who unfortunately passed away just over 30 years ago, and I would have been about the same age as the main character on Jennifer Slept Here, the teenage son.
Right.
I would have been about 14 as well,
mm-hmm.
And even to this day, 30 plus years later, I still have regrets about things that I didn't do with my grandfather, where I wish I could have said, just one last time, can we go fishing or can we go, do this? And so this is like hitting really hard for me. This is hitting home.
Yeah, I'm going to let you. I did have a tear in my eye when this was going on. And I think anyone that's ever been really close to anybody and had this and had them die, I really do think that it would hit home no matter who you are. It is definitely the most realistic of the plots of the 13 shows. And, and they tried to incorporate a little bit of humor in it, of course, obviously. But it was like after the second half started, it was like Steel Magnolias at the friggin' at the cemetery. It was just downhill as far as the comic relief. It went downhill. The seriousness shot through the roof.
I know the show was essentially, excuse the phrase, the pun, I know it was dead from the start. Yeah. But I just wonder if this episode aired instead of in late April of '84, if this was one of the first few episodes that was done might it have saved the show? If there is some sort of realism, something that people can connect with, could it maybe have saved the show? I don't know, but the thing is,
I also want to say I think this one was recorded a lot earlier as far as the production number was concerned. I think it was one of the earlier ones recorded. I might be wrong on that. But for whatever reason, they held off on airing it until later.
Which I think it's a big mistake. I think really if there's any way you can get your characters or your viewers to connect with characters, you definitely do it from the start.
It's always a death or a birth in a sitcom where people start to connect.
And the thing is that they saved this until late summer of '84, and again, by that time, we'll get into the ratings in a little bit, but needless to say, the show was not going to make it to a second season. I just wonder if the episodes were placed in a different order, if maybe they could have drawn some more viewers, even though you had a bad show before Jennifer Slept Here, and you had probably a worse show after Jennifer Slept Here.
Right.
So that was our very special episode, and yes, after hearing that and just getting a little emotional, that is a very special show, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, it is.
And now I know what I'm going to be looking for on YouTube after we finish this recording.
Yep.
If it's up there. Episode 12, The Tutor Who Came to Dinner.
Yes.
When a new tutor appears to help Joey, Jennifer becomes jealous of her, and for good reason, as the tutor, played by Gail Edwards, who was also on It's a Living with Ann Jillian, is actually Jennifer's spiritual replacement.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, there seems like there's a little bit to unpack here, so go for it.
Yeah, we went from incredibly serious, incredibly relatable plotline to... Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so here's the deal. As you just said, yes, it starred Gail Edwards, who played Dot in It's a Living, which I always wondered, that had to be fun, because I believe It's a Living was off the air during that 1 year. I think that was when it was transitioning from network to syndication, I think.
It was a little more than a year, but It's a Living got canceled, I believe, in 82 or 83, and then it returned in syndication in 85.
Okay. So, first of all, having them reunited had to be interesting if you were a fan of It's a Living at the time. So basically, here's the deal. The powers that be were trying to say that Jennifer was a bad influence on Joey, that she was not treating him, she wasn't being a proper muse, a proper guide, as it were. So Gail Edwards' character was sent to be her replacement. And it was one of those scenarios where Jennifer's like, I don't understand how you can possibly say that I am a bad influence on Joey. Well, Gail Edwards grabs a tape player and is playing basically nothing but Jennifer barking at Joey about petty things. And essentially what happens is that Joey does not want Jennifer to leave because they had already gotten close at this point. And Jennifer's like, well, I don't know what we can do. So Joey was like, well, what if I can make it so that you do something that is amazing for me? You know, like I can show her how I can be so very difficult. You know, like I can have little fits, let's, see how good she can handle me. I can really, play it up. So he starts playing it up, I need this, I need that, I have demands. And Jennifer's going, you better do this because he's going to have fits until you do what he tells you. So she starts doing it Gail Edwards' character starts doing it for a couple of minutes. And then she was like, you know what? Do you really think that I'm that stupid that I don't know what you two are doing? And ultimately, in the end, Gail Edwards' character is like, but you know what? The fact that the two of you obviously care enough about each other to go through all this trouble, obviously you guys need each other, so I'm going to get out of here.
Nice.
Speechless.
Ironically, Gail Edwards was using not necessarily sex appeal for Joey in the very beginning to get him to get on her side, but let's face it, she was kind of flaunting it a little bit in the beginning.
And that takes us to the final episode. Take Jennifer, please. This sounds like it was written by Henny Youngman. Take my wife, please. Fed up with having his father not believing that he can see Jennifer, Joey must find a way to convince him otherwise, even if it means having Jennifer prove her presence before the entire family. So Jennifer tells Joey that she'll help him if Joey can produce the real will she wrote, which is located in George's office safe.
Right.
Now wait a second. Well, okay, now there's no way she could have gotten the will out of the safe, but couldn't she go into the safe to look at the will?
Well, here's the thing. The whole point of the story was that there was no will. She had never written a will. And it was a phony will that somebody was cracking up to try to get her belongings. So it was a fake will. And what happened was, this is also the episode where we learn how Jennifer died. Have we discussed that yet?
No, we haven't.
No, we have not.
Okay, so here's what happened. In the middle of all this, Joey's like, I really wish whatever. And she was like, well, anyway, it should be mentioned that George's character is a lawyer. So he found the will and he was trying to do what was right with the will. But Jennifer's going, I never had a will. Now, the way that she was like, did I ever tell you how I died? And he was like, no, you never told me. She had written a letter stating what she really wanted done, which was nothing. She was on her way to mail this letter that proved that there was no will. There was no active will because it wasn't finalized. While she was walking to the post office or wherever she was going to her mailbox or whatever, she got run over by an ice cream truck.
Oops.
As she says on the show, she was creamed by a creamsicle. So anyway, the point is that the letter that she was mailing was going to be proof that there was no official will yet. And the problem was that she knew that it was in the office, but she didn't know where in the office it was. Didn't know if it was in a safe, didn't know if it was, because his office was an absolute mess. So they were finally able to get the paper, which cleared her name with there not being will. So, basically they inherited everything.
Okay.
Now, there's only one thing I can say about this, and now I can see why this series was canceled, because one phrase comes to mind right now. If there's a will, there's a way they get renewed.
Boo!
I'm sorry, could you say it a little louder for the people in the back?
Oh, you mean for the cheap seats?
I'm sorry. That was I had to do that. I
That's
no regrets.
5, Mike Klaus.
So yeah, that was Jennifer Slept Here. The ratings were horrible. I mentioned this on. I'm
Did it
sorry.
actually do better in reruns than it did in its actual run?
It did, and actually, I was going to get to that. We mentioned on a previous episode, I believe it was the Mr. Smith episode, that the week of Mr. Smith's final episode, which would have been, I believe, the 16th of December, the Mr. Smith was the 63rd rated show out of 65 shows that week. And 61st was either Manimal or Jennifer Slept Here, and the other one of those three was 59th. So already in 3 months into the season or 2 months into the season, Jennifer Slept Here was in the bottom 10% of the ratings. And we mentioned also that in summer of '84, it got rerun twice. It was rerun on Wednesdays and also on Fridays. And the ratings actually did manage to break the top 30. However, it really didn't make much of a difference because for the 1983-84 season, Jennifer Slept Here was ranked 89th.
Oh, wow. That show is dead in the water.
Yeah.
That's how you make a pun, Mike.
Hey, I liked my "If There's a Will, There's a Way" pun. Just because you don't, not my fault, you don't have any taste. But talking about this show, might we see it in reruns? For 13 episodes, it's not going to be on TV ever again, probably.
No, I would find that very I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell, which is probably where Jennifer ended up.
Oh, jeez! And you're complaining about my
very
puns?
nice.
Oh
Very
my
nice.
God!
Very nice, Chris.
Well,
It's all in the delivery, my friend.
and I didn't deliver, obviously. Well, Jennifer Slept Here was partially produced by Columbia Pictures Television, which means it's under the Sony umbrella, which means, there's an app that Sony has called Crackle. Might it somehow one day appear on Crackle? Because sometimes they show some really weird stuff on there. I've just thrown that up in the air. I mean, we've sort of gone this route with most every show, saying, this is under the Viacom umbrella or the Disney umbrella, and you've got Disney Plus coming out, and what if Viacom or CBS All Access we talked about, what if they decide to put it on there one day? You never know, and it seems like a lot of these corporations, companies, are digitizing their holdings, not necessarily just for an on-demand market or Amazon Prime or similar, but also just to archive them, because obviously digital stuff takes up a lot less space than an actual tangible cassette or film reel.
Right. Plus the deterioration from decades of storage. Even if they're stored properly, we are now learning as time goes on just how severely damaged film can be. We're also learning in recent years just how the lifespan of CD and DVDs are. We're learning that the earliest ones of them are starting to now fail. So it's all a matter of how can we preserve what we have done already. And right now, digital is the way.
No, you're absolutely right, because weren't like Johnny Carson's tapes stored in like a salt mine in Kansas or something like that? And they're going to degrade. It's just it's basic chemistry.
Right.
Everything has a half-life. Everything has some sort of recommended temperature or environmental settings.
Right.
And gosh knows that, with the entire debate of global warming over the last 30, 40 years, stuff is going to just be unplayable. Plus also, on top of that, just the just based on the obsolescence, the antiquity of equipment. I mean, if stuff was filmed on 2 or 3 inch tapes back in the 70s, they don't make those machines. They haven't made those machines probably in 40 or 45 years. You have no way to watch them.
You don't even have to go back that far. You can go back about a dozen years. Not many people even have VHS decks anymore.
Oh, no. And actually, it's kind of funny. I was just thinking the other day, I could actually use a VCR to look through some of my old tapes, and I think the only functional VCR I have is one that I know hasn't been used in at least, I would say, 13 years, which was my grandmother's.
Uh-huh.
So who knows if even that works? Maybe it needs some oil or WD-40 in order to get working.
It's one of those, when it comes to home VHS, it's one of those things where you kind of wish a lot more people took the Sally Struthers route and took TV VCR repair, because in this day and age, the only way to preserve some of these is and I'm saying this as somebody that collects computers and gaming consoles from the 70s and 80s, the only way to make sure that they're going to continue to work is to learn how to maintain them internally.
That's absolutely true. They don't make them anymore. They stopped making VHS decks 2 or 3 years ago.
Right. Now, I have, for example, I have an Apple II right next to me. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at it right now. If that thing fails, if I don't know how to fix it, it's going to cost me a couple $100s to get another one, if I can find one in that condition.
If you can find one, period. I mean, I'm sure it's not that hard. You can find it on eBay or someplace, but then you get into shipping it, and shipping an Apple IIe is not going to be cheap.
Right. Plus, you have to realize, do you want to spend $300 for a new Apple II when it's a $5 part that needs to be replaced?
Right.
So when it comes to preservation, the best thing that you can do, and this goes out to anybody regardless of what their hobby may be, if it involves anything that plugs in, the best thing that you can do is to learn how it works from the inside and learn how to do your own repairs. for preservation of anything.
You're absolutely correct about that.
Great insight.
Very good, yes. Well, we're going to do a little postscript on Jennifer Slept here. We've gone through the episodes. We've gone through the history. Well, the first thing I want to bring up is we talked before we started recording about the theme song. And I think we are diametrically opposed on the feelings of the theme song. Kris, I think you really enjoyed it.
It was good, corny 80s cheese.
Okay, and that's the reason I didn't like it, but also
pasteurized processed cheese product.
Let me put it this way. There's two different types of cheese products. We have your Velveetas, and then we have that Kraft crap in the green cans.
This is the crap in the green cans.
This is the leftover bottom that you find in the back of the fridge about 3 years later of that green canned Kraft cheese.
Uh-huh.
But here's the thing. I might not like the Kraft cheese, but I like other corniness. Let me just put it that way.
Well, and now that you make that comparison to Velveeta and the crappy, are you basically suggesting government cheese?
Let me put it this way. Not even rations, not even survival rations from the 50s.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the thing I wanted to say was the person who actually did the theme song was a gentleman named Joey Scarberry, who we talked about earlier. He is best known for probably one of the best theme songs ever. One that actually hit the charts.
Yeah, believe it or not.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air.
Co-written by Mike Post, the king of the theme song.
Yep.
Well, and this was the theme song to the short-lived but really great The Greatest American Hero back in, I think it was about 81, 82. Mm-hmm. Best theme song ever. And I'm going to sort of rank this. The Greatest American Hero theme, believe it or not, it isn't Velveeta. It is like upper class Brie or Gruyere or whatever. The best cheese in the world is that. And then right around the time that that Jennifer Slept Here aired, he did work on one of Kris's favorite specials. I know this. It's Flash Beagle, Charlie Brown.
Hey, he's the champion. He's the best. Impossible to tame. All right.
So that right there, Flash Beagle is your Velveeta.
That shows my taste in cheese.
But still, that's the Velveeta. That's the lower middle tier or middle tier of cheeses. And then Jennifer Slept Here is like 3 floors below the sub-basement. It isn't even like deserving of having the word cheese. I'm sorry. I got through the theme about 10 seconds of the theme, maybe even less than that, because it was just so. Oh.
All right, now let's.
And I had to actually ask myself, this is the same guy who did The Greatest American Hero?
Now,
I mean, they're just so horrible.
Now, continuing on with the opening credits, what did you think about the Young and the Restless style sketching?
I said I didn't really pay attention to that.
I was a fan of the Young and the Restless sketching, actually.
Because that's the type of sketching that was done for the opening of Jennifer Slept Here.
Yes. Oh, it's very similar. Like I said, I didn't really pay much attention to it. I was still like racking my brain over how bad the theme song was. but no, it was definitely a unique type of way to introduce the credits.
Well, try next time you go to watch one. Try watching the opening credits muted.
You actually think I'm going to go revisit this show after today?
Oh, you have to. You have to watch Grandfather.
I'm going to look at the Grandfather episode. I really seriously will try to look for if it's online. Which, based on the other episodes, it looks like they are online. It's online somewhere. Yeah. But also, I mean, think about, and this is going to parallel another NBC show in the early '80s. Remember how the opening to Family Ties was? It wasn't really a sketch more than a painting.
Yes.
Yeah. And this was seasons 2 through 4, I think.
Yeah, I think it was until, another spoiler for another future episode. until they had the little kid who magically grew up to be like 6 years old in 1 year.
Hey, TV is magic.
Oh, we're going to get into some of the magic and goofiness in future episodes, but yeah, that's been the topic of a conversation between myself, Chico, and Greg, is just how magically the little boy on Family Ties who was born, I think it was the 85-86 season or 84-85, how he suddenly became like 4 or 5 years old in the next season.
Same with Growing Pains.
Same with Growing Pains. We talked about that as well, absolutely. But bringing it back on track here, regarding the actors themselves, we talked about Georgia Engel. She just passed away this past April. I apologize for leaving her out when I was mentioning the cast earlier.
As you should have.
She is a legend. I mean, you may not know the name, but you definitely know the face, and you definitely know the voice. So, and then Ann Gillian, she went through a lot right after Jennifer slept here.
Yeah.
She's been through a lot since. In 1985, she had a cancer scare at 35. So young.
Yep.
And she had a mastectomy done in 1985. She formally retired as an actress in 2000. And her last appearance was on an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger. And really, she's been sort of out of the limelight since, I would really say, since like the late 80s. I remember as a kid hearing a lot about her cancer scare, and then it seemed like around 87, 88, you didn't hear much of her anymore.
Right. Now, she did have that other show, the Angelian show. I believe that was late 80s.
That was about 1988. She played the police officer.
Right,
Yeah.
88, 89, yeah.
Yep.
But she's essentially been out of the limelight since then, and she hasn't even there's no credits to her name over the last almost 20 years. But she'd be 70 at this point. She has a well-deserved retirement.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. She, as much as maybe Chris might make fun of her, she was a very decent actress throughout the entirety of the 80s outside of her medical scare.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, It's a Living still reruns nowadays on Logo, so it couldn't have been that bad.
And it's going to be joining Antenna TV in January.
Very nice.
Which we do have here in Raleigh, so.
You do or you don't?
We do.
Oh, okay.
I do and I don't. Cleveland does carry Antenna TV. The problem is I can't get Antenna TV on my cable system, nor can I get it through a satellite, even though I live 15 miles away from downtown Cleveland.
How about another?
And I live on a hill, so go figure. I can't get satellite reception on a hill.
Not even an over-the-air antenna?
I've tried. I've tried numerous times.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I have had very bad luck with antennas, and I was thinking about getting a full-fledged antenna on the roof, but I ultimately said to myself, why am I going to waste the money if I can't get any of these digital stations?
Right. Like, I've been wanting to do that, too. Unfortunately, Philadelphia is the closest city for me, and that's 45 miles away. And I live in the woods. I have a one-story house. I'm surrounded by two-story houses. It was not happening.
Yeah, you're not getting anything out there. I'm sorry.
No. So I'm kind of stuck with cable, unfortunately.
Well, some cable systems do carry Antenna TV. I know my father's does, so maybe you just need to find the right provider.
Right. Now, of course, in my area, you have a choice, Comcast or nothing.
Boy, that's not much of a choice.
No, I mean, if you want to go cable, we don't have access to Fios around here. Of course, we could go through the dishes if we want to, but even that, it's a gamble in some areas.
And as we mentioned earlier, Glenn Scarpelli is doing well. He is actually, as I said, either friends or friends of Chris and myself, and is actually very active when talking with a mutual friend of ours.
Absolutely.
And he is a big supporter of. Obviously, he is homosexual. He's obviously a big supporter of the gay rights movement. He's been a very big influence on a number of friends of ours. Very big influence.
Right. And let me see, what else could I say about him? Are you aware that he had released a record?
What?
I did not know that.
He released a record. It was actually kind of funny. We were talking a couple of weeks ago, and for those that do not know, let me tell you, I have a little radio program at my college radio station where I play 80s music, and he had released a record, self-titled record, and it didn't. There was one single released. It was called "Get a Love On," and it was kind of like a dancey R&B style. It didn't do well in the charts, but I actually played it on my show a couple of times. And when I told Glenn that I had played it on my show, he was like, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, I played it." I showed him a copy of the log, and he was like, "That is so fun. I don't even think my songs were ever played on the radio, let alone in 2019." And so he got a real kick out of that when I showed him the logs. He was like, "That is so cool, seeing my name on a radio station log after all these years." And in recent years, he has been working on a segment on his local cable system. It's called Sedona Now Television, and it's just like a little thing that he does in regards to producing local content, which is kind of a rarity in this day and age when you think about it. Everything is so national anymore. So he's been working on some local television station segments for a little production that he's been doing in recent years.
Sweet.
Well, it's good he's still in the business. That's great.
Yeah, he enjoys it.
Superb. Well, that wraps up Jennifer Slept Here. Before we go, I know Kris just mentioned his radio show. Would you like to do a more formal plug?
Sure. The name of the program is called The Vinyl Countdown. I got the name from Grand Theft Auto Vice City. I thought that was a kick-ass name for a record store, and I was like, that would be a great name for a radio show. It's on the air currently it's on every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern. In the southeastern Jersey area, it's on 107.9 WRML, but it is also available online at WRMLradio.org. It's on Wednesday nights from 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. The entire show is dedicated to music of the 80s.
Nice.
Now I hope you don't get sued by Rockstar Games for using their name.
Well, well, guess what? I'm not the only one that uses that name, so let's have some fun.
Oh, there you go. You're going to just point at somebody else. He did it before me, Mr. Teacher.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, that works really well in my classroom, Kris. I'm just telling you that right now.
I'm sorry, Mr. Klaus.
But yeah, I will vouch. Kris does a great job. And he's been doing this for some time, and he is a kid of the 80s. Let's just admit that. He is a true kid of the 80s. He loves that time era, the music, the television. He does a great job. Please, listen to him.
Thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome. In terms of plugging for us, as always, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/itwasathingontv, on Instagram at instagram.com /itwasathingontv, on Tumblr at itwasathingontv.tumblr.com, and we're on Twitter at, guess what? Twitter.com/itwasathingontv. And as always, you can find all the episodes of the podcast on iTunes, on Google Play, on Stitcher, and at our website, which is itwasathingontv.podbean.com.
I was just about to say, Kris Lane, feel free to come back anytime.
I would love to. I had a great time. Thanks for having me, gentlemen. I appreciate it. I had such a fun time.
You are definitely a friend of the show. You feel free to let us know when you'd like to return. Also, one little correction / update from last week before we go. I had mentioned that people would watch Manimal if Simon McCorkindale had ever turned into a nice animal, a kitty cat or a puppy dog. Well, guess what? Simon McCorkindale transformed into a kitty cat on the Manimal pilot.
This cannot be stressed enough.
This cannot be overemphasized. Right in your face, Greg. He was a little kitty cat in an episode.
Meow.
And it still didn't save the show.
Meow.
Well, that wraps up not just this episode of It Was the Thing on TV, but also, if you noticed, there was a little commonality between the 4 episodes we've done thus far. Match Game Hollywood Squares, Manimal. I'm not going to include Automan for an obvious reason. Mr. Smith and Jennifer Slept Here. Those shows were 1983 bombs, not necessarily bombs, but there were shows on NBC in 1983/84. And actually, one of the goals we have for this podcast is we're going to be giving you sort of thematic blocks of episodes. It may be 4 episodes like this. It may be 2 episodes. We've got certain special episodes along the way, but starting next week, we're going to start a new block of episodes. I'm not going to tell you the theme of those episodes, but you'll have at least, I think we have 4 episodes. You'll have, I got it somewhere. I'll take a look at it later. You'll have 4 episodes of the theme. Plus, actually, we're going to be doing a bonus episode unrelated to that theme for Thanksgiving. And so you'll get the week of Thanksgiving, the week of the 23rd or 24th, you'll get a normal thematic episode and a bonus episode, like a mini-sode, if you will. So keep your eyes out for that. See if you can identify the mystery theme. It shouldn't be that hard. Again, as always, thank you, Chico, for helping us out. Greg, thank you for helping. And Kris, again, whenever you want to come back, let us know. You are more than welcome to come back with your insight.
Awesome. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate it.
And most of all, thank you for listening to the podcast. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.